There we go. So just to introduce myself, I'm Connor. I'm the work experience manager for placements in the careers service at Newcastle Uni. Here today to speak to you, we've got Bradley Lloyd, Emily Knight, and George Squires, who are going to share a bit about their experience of studying and beyond in terms of what they're doing for work now. So I won't say too much about that because they're going to tell you about themselves. But on that note, I will hand over to George, who's going to start us off today. Thank you very much, George.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah, so afternoon, everyone. I'm George Squires. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview about my time at university, what I got involved with, what I did, and then what I've gone to do afterwards. So I attended Newcastle Uni 2015 to 2019, which is devastating. It's coming up to a decade since I started. That's a lovely milestone. Well, I did an undergraduate in Ancient History and Archaeology for my BA, and then I stayed on to do my MA in Greek Archaeology, specifically like Greek prehistory. That's where my interest was. So while I was at uni, one of the reasons I took Ancient History and Archaeology and went down that pathway was just to the breadth of modules I could do. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do going into it or even coming out of it. And I just quite liked history and quite liked different bits. And I liked the archaeology element added a practical aspect as well. There was a lot of really good opportunities as well when I was at uni. So I managed to get involved with the British School at Athens, which is one of the British Academy Research Institutes abroad. Based out of Athens, surprisingly enough, during my first year at uni there. So went in over the summer for 3 or 4 weeks to do like an intensive undergraduate summer school. We tour a bunch of Greek sites and eat a lot of gyros, which was really, really good. If anyone is sort of interested in that side of stuff, do drop me a message. I've sort of stayed involved with the BSA since leaving uni, so happy to have some conversations around that. But also Matthew Haytham and Joe Skinner, who you might meet when you get to Newcastle, are heavily involved and they're really good contacts to know on that one. The second year at uni, went on an exchange program with Oxford Uni around Christmas time, not at Christmas, it was just after Christmas, where we looked at Etruscans and did a bit on Etruscan burial and Etruscan language, which was really interesting. And then some Oxford students came up to Newcastle and we taught them a bit of frontiers archaeology, which was really cool. And then got out to Northern Ireland in my second year summer to do field work and conduct a bunch of geophysics surveying on Inish Irwin, which is like the little tip of Northern Ireland, or I think it might be the Republic of Ireland, actually. But that was really cool. Really good opportunity out there. Third year, went out to Prague with the Archaeology Society, which was really cool. 5 days in Prague over Easter. And then sort of like around all this, I also took part in the Climbing Society. So I did a lot of rock climbing for university and sort of went to competitions around country with those, which was a really good opportunity. Stayed on to do the Greek Archaeology MA. I found during my time there that I loved Greek prehistory, especially like trade relations between mainland Greece, Crete, and then the Near East and sort of Cyprus and Lebanon, which was really cool. And they offer these independent study programs, which just sort of give you full reign in what you actually can do when you're studying and what you get stuck into if you research. I think the undergraduate sets you up really well to do that because of sort of like the dissertation modules and the support you get. To become a researcher, you then get to sort of apply that at master's level, which was really cool. Did a bit of field work in North Yorkshire every Friday for 8 weeks during the first semester of that. Less glamorous than going around Greece, I'll be honest, but got you out of the house. And we did a specialist like metallurgy course as well, looking at ancient weaponry over the Easter holidays, which was really cool. Andrea Dolfini ran that. I believe he's still around. And they had people come from all over the world to the labs at Newcastle and sort of thoughts about ancient swords and how they were used and how to look at sort of metalware analysis and all that sort of stuff, which was really, really cool. Also, I was supported to like do a bunch of conference presentations, which I don't know if that happens much at master's level at other universities, but Newcastle is really pro on like pushing you in that direction if you want to. If you want to go and present your research or attend conferences, like Newcastle is really supportive of that, which I thought was really cool. Realised I basically spoke about how much I travelled while I was at uni, which was a really good opportunity. I highly recommend everyone get involved where you can do sort of like study abroad schemes or university exchange, make full use of the lecturers, their connections, because of, they've all done it before and they can help you get on those things. And that's where like the opportunities for growth are, and like where your best experiences will come from. But yeah, that was my time at Newcastle, really. It was really cool. I still can't believe it's coming up to a decade. So after I left Newcastle to get onto my career path now, I moved into the civil service. So I was fortunate enough to get onto the civil service fast stream, in particular the commercial fast stream, which is like the graduate scheme. So you get posted around different government departments over a 3 year graduate scheme, and then by the end, you sort of hopefully find yourself a permanent role in government, which was really cool. I started in 2020, so I went straight into like a remote working environment as opposed to like office time. So that was something to contend with. But I was quite fortunate in that everyone was doing the same thing, so you just sort of pick it up as you go. My first year was working for the Department of Education as what's called an ICT category manager. That just means you're responsible for like that thing. So I was responsible for ICT. As you probably imagine, being responsible for ICT during COVID, during the first year of remote education, was quite a sort of baptism of fire. But it was quite cool to be able to support schools with a remote education element. Got to lead into like the DFE Digital 2030 strategy. So how do we sort of migrate schools to more cloud facing, embed new technology, sort of like modernize some of the digital estate across the schools nationwide, which was a really cool piece of work to be doing when you're like 22, 23. And I got involved on like COVID mass testing programs for a while, bit of spurred support over there. Some of you might remember it from your own time at school. You know, positive and negative views on that one. It was an interesting piece of work to get involved with, and something that was so highly political at the time. So after DFE, for my second year, I ended up in the Cabinet Office as a commercial policy lead. So policy is basically you're getting the right people in the room to have a conversation. You're not the expert. You're just taking lots of expert ideas and drafting them into something coherent. So a lot of the skills you learn at uni, especially in archaeology, where you're constructing arguments, or history even, constructing arguments, putting them into essay, long form, short form, whatever it is, really come into play if anyone does want to move into more of the policy space. Again, that was quite interesting. So I was responsible for construction and the digital portfolios, which were about £800 billion annually for the UK economy. So again, you put a 23-year-old in charge of all that, which was a bit nuts. But it was quite a good learning experience, and wrote some policy guidance notes, which I still use now. I still use my day job elsewhere, actually. So it was quite nice to have a bit of lasting impact there. I worked with several ministers, which was interesting. It was around the downfall of the Boris Johnson government, if anyone remembers that. So I went through Lord Agnew, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Steve Barclay. There was a whole host of them. Again, different views on positive and negatives, but really cool to be exposed to sort of like ministers of that age and understand the relationship between like the Cabinet Office and Number 10. I'm quite grateful for that opportunity. And in my final year on the fast stream was at the Department for Work and Pension, where I just managed a contract. There's a lot less sort of like interesting and flash, but it was quite a useful sort of like day-to-day skill. So never one to shy away from those, but always quite helpful. Then after finishing at DWP and finishing at fast stream in August 2023, I moved into the National Crime Agency as what's called a commercial business partner. So my job was basically, we had a bunch of intelligence transformation programs. Oh, actually, if anyone doesn't know what the National Crime Agency is, go and have a look on LinkedIn, because they post videos all the time. But basically, their job is to stop serious and organised crime, which is quite interesting. So basically, I support intelligence transformation programs to go in, here's what our current capability is, here's what we need to get to fight organised crime. How do we bridge that gap? Which is really, really cool. So got involved in a bunch of like security improvement stuff, there's some tech stuff, did some work on body worn video, and then did a bunch of cross-government working as well. You work quite a lot with, sneaky beaky agencies, which you probably imagine, but also like the Foreign Office, the Home Office, MOD. There's quite a lot of sort of cross-government collaboration going on, so that was quite interesting to get involved in that. And again, so bringing it back to the skill that I learned at my degree level, again, it's just how do you sort of create a narrative? Like the whole point of when you write an essay or, you're answering a question at uni, you basically try and convince the assessor of your point of view, going, I believe this thing happened because of X, Y, Z reason. The same in the working world. I'm trying to convince another government body that we need to do X, Y, and Z based on this bunch of evidence. So it really is quite translatable, which is quite nice. But I worked there until last December, where I then joined a company called Agilia, so nice little logo in the bottom left. As a consultant, so I went to the dark side, joined the private sector even, sorry. Where I now work as a commercial consultant for an infrastructure consultancy. So I've sort of broken down a little bit around what a commercial consultant is on the screen, just because I know consultancy is a bit of a black hole term, like no one actually knows what we do. I think that's half the art. But one of the reasons I joined Agilia was they're based in the Northeast. At the time I was living in London, I really wanted to move back to Newcastle. I needed a job up here. So that's where a Northeast based consultancy was really attractive. But all our clients are still in London, and they pay for my travel to London basically, which is lovely of them. But being a consultant, what does it mean? So infrastructure consultancy is you tend to support large infrastructure programs. So a lot of these you've probably seen in the news. So Sizewell C, the new power plant down in the sort of east of England, Thames Tideway, the super sewer that opened a couple of years ago, Great British Nuclear. So people might have seen about the small modular reactors, which are coming online, will be coming online in the next few years. That's going to be quite big. And our job is to basically take that concept and put it into action. Like, how do you take these organizations and help them achieve their goals? Quite often, they're so large and so complex that departments and government and the public sector don't have the skill set or the right capacity to be able to deliver these. So you need to bring in sort of like external expertise and bring in consultants. And the benefit of that is we aren't permanent. So once the job's done, you can just get rid of us. Whereas when you hire permanent staff, you're kind of stuck with the staff. So that's sort of like the consultancy role. My job in particular is to write commercial strategy. So when we go, all right, we need a new power plant, government's not going to employ 400,000 construction workers directly. And you've got to work with your supply chain. And it's a global supply chain. So my job is to take that idea, put it into action. How do we shape the supply chain in such a way that it can deliver the outcomes and the benefits that the government's seeking? Quite a large amount of money. So I deal with the Cabinet Office and the Treasury a lot. Trying to remind them and sort of like assure them that we are spending the money wisely. And it's sort of like, it's going to achieve the outcomes. You might have seen in the latest spending review, I think it was Sizewell got £14 billion to spend over the next Parliament. That's a small part of the British economy. So basically, we're hoping to assure the Treasury we're sending it in the correct way, which is always the ambition, isn't it? But it's quite interesting. So, I mean, we got asked what's a typical day look like. I actually know 2 days the same. One day it is working with the Treasury or negotiating multi-billion-pound contracts that are going to be in place for 15, 16, 20 years. And then the next day it's much more low level going, there's a bit of government policy come out. What does it actually mean? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for the industry? How does it impact our work and how do we acknowledge it? So it really does vary on the day-to-day, which I quite like, because you can see my favourite part of the job down the bottom is I just quite like problem solving. I'm not, there is an element of wanting to do social good and, like sort of clean energy and sustainability and sort of like, lead the country in a better way than you find it and all that sort of stuff. And we do have failing infrastructure in this country. We need to take action and improve what we have. So it's quite nice to feed into that. But selfishly, I just actually quite like solving problems, and infrastructure presents some quite large problems. I like that I have the freedom to approach them in different ways. One of the benefits of being a consultant is you're based on your outcomes, or you're assessed on your outcomes. People don't really care how you deliver the work. It's not, you're rigid, you must do these roles. It's actually just, we need you to go and do this thing. How you do it is up to you. I really like that freedom. So that's something that I found that I didn't get in the public sector. The civil service is much more bureaucratic and much more constrained in how it operates, which it has to be. Obviously, that's much more directly funded by the taxpayer, and you need to make sure it's being spent reliably, and the people sort of like working for the taxpayer directly are working in that very sort of like constrained, sort of like assured environment. But you do get a bit more flexibility in the private sector. So I'm quite enjoying that at the minute. Other bits I do, so I'm also an army reservist. I joined this during uni because I needed extra money. And it was quite interesting. I started off in a parachute regiment for a couple of years, so I got a bit sick of running up and down hills on a weekend and getting smashed. So I moved over to the Intelligence Corps, which has been a really good opportunity. You get to work on some quite prominent topics that you're probably all aware of in the news. I've also been able to go skydiving and go scuba diving and all that fun stuff as well on the side. So I really recommend the Army Reserve. I think the skills I get from that as well, sort of being an intelligence analyst, and again, analysing evidence, constructing an argument, giving a brief, really do play into sort of like both what I was doing at uni, but they've set me up for life in my professional career, which is really handy. So it integrates quite nicely with what I did at Newcastle. And then just how did Newcastle set me up for success and some top tips. I won't go through all these because the one you can read them until I've sort of covered them off already, I think. In terms of top tips, just for obviously you're heading into your first year at uni, don't overwork yourselves. I know a lot of people who went in want to smash uni. It's a very admirable ambition, but it is very much a marathon, not a sprint. If you go in and you absolutely kill yourself in year one, you might not be able to maintain that going into your second and third years, which will be years which matter, arguably. Having said that, though, do develop good habits. I also have a lot of mates who maybe didn't work hard enough. And if you set yourself up, what's a good library routine for you? What's a good essay writing routine? How do you sort of like take notes, all that sort of stuff? That's what you should be figuring out in first year. Just how do you work? How do you like to work? How do you manage your time? Something I've learned is that if you give yourself 6 weeks to do an essay, the essay will take 6 weeks. You give yourself 2 weeks, it'll take 2 weeks. So, just think about time management a little bit. Give yourself enough, but don't take it so long that you're going to take 4 months to write an essay because you'll just stress about it for 4 months and it's a bit pointless. Additionally, for welders, widen your calls and your halls. So, volunteer, join societies, meet people, get involved in things that you otherwise wouldn't do. That's one of the big benefits of university is sort of like that broader environment, that social environment. And like when you're moving on, think about what your next steps are, which I know are quite a way away. People are looking for well-rounded people and, different influences, different ways of developing yourself, looking at the world is really what employers are looking for now. Mark's seen a lot about the AI revolution and how that's impacting work. Could go down a massive rabbit hole there. Basically, what that means is employers are looking to hire people who are good with people now. It's less about technical ability and that sort of like analytical skill set. It's more about how do you talk to people, how do you hold a conversation, how do you build your network. That sort of stuff really matters now. So just take that time at uni, get to meet people, get involved with stuff and develop those soft skills as well. And then just enjoy it. I mean, you're only there. Well, you're probably only going to be there for once, so make the most of the opportunity. You don't want to come away having never gone to a lecture, having turned in every essay late, and having never been involved with societies or anything because of, what did you go to uni for 3 years for? Like, make the most of the opportunity, but just do enjoy it while you're there.
Fantastic. That was great. Thank you, George. Remember, we got the Q&A coming up, but if you think of any questions as you go along, feel free to put them in the Q&A box as we go, and we'll revisit those. So I will now pass over to Emily Knight.
Hi, everybody. Well, I feel like I am the ancient history joining this. If George was freaking out about 10 years, try 20 since you left university. So I studied ancient history and archaeology from 2001 to 2004. And in a very similar way to George, I picked the course because I had an interest in the subjects, and I felt by doing that the dual course that one would help informing the other. So that was very simply my choice. I didn't really know what I wanted to go on to, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just went with something that I thought I really would enjoy my time doing. And I would say that I was probably a bit of an opposite to George in a way. I wasn't a massive joiner. I was quite shy at uni, and that I suppose is one of my regrets and will be one of my hints and tips later as well to get stuck in a bit more. But what I did do was join in when there were things particularly kind of put together by the department and projects that they asked for help with. So had some really good times building things like Mesolithic roundhouses and things like that. So it was a great opportunity to get to know the course mates better, get stuck into the course itself more. And that was my way of kind of joining in. And I do feel very fortunate that I got to study subjects that I genuinely enjoyed, and I appreciate for a lot of you now picking things for university, it's a bigger decision, the financial constraints are that much more. But if you are able to do something that you really are going to enjoy, I think you'll find from the three of us that this course doesn't limit you. Actually, it gives you a lot of options in the future and gives you a lot of transferable and changeable skills that will, set you off in a myriad of different courses. I know the course mates, from my time, some of them are still in archaeology, through to whole myriad of career choices. So it really does give you quite a lot of flexibility for your future as well. And I do feel that this course I mean, I don't know what the numbers are now, but when I was there, say things like business studies, it was hundreds and hundreds of people on that course, whereas ancient history and archaeology, I think there was about maybe 15 of us doing the joint honours, and then the overall like archaeology year was maybe something like 40, 50. So I got to know everyone really well, and we had a really tight kind of unit, which was a really lovely experience to have over those 3 years, as well as your friends outside of it. So it was kind of quite a special 3 years, I'd say. And then I really enjoyed having the opportunity to try the practical elements of the course as well. And I did find that I really enjoyed those. And I was very lucky on one of the digs that I did as part of my, I think it was like my first year dig. There was a master's student that was working on it, and he was doing part of his practical for his master's course as well. And it involved bringing in school groups and working with them on site. And for me, that was a bit of a light bulb moment, that I really enjoyed that engagement thing. I would call myself a fair weather archaeologist. I don't want to be out there in the wet and the cold, but I really enjoyed connecting with people. And that was quite a thing to kind of just like trigger and log at that point in first year as something that would be important for me in the future. And it was around that time, at kind of back end of second year, starting to think about what next, that I decided that I wanted to do a master's, and I ended up doing the Museum Studies Masters out of Newcastle as well. But I had a year kind of in between, because I needed to save up for it. But that gave me a bit of opportunity to do some volunteering. So I was really lucky that in my home city, there were some community digs going on that I could get involved in. And those archaeologists were brilliant with me and kind of gave me various kind of development opportunities, let me lead a trench, and just gave me a load of experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I was really pleased to have taken up that volunteering opportunity. And then the Masters itself was a very vocational course. So I really came out of that feeling prepared to work within the museum and heritage sector, because I decided that is where my heart lies, and that's where I wanted to go. And I continued with volunteering off the back of that, applying for jobs, any job, but volunteering across a few different organisations in Worcester, where I was back living with my folks, trying to just get anything I could in that sector. And it was at that point that I applied for a job in the National Trust, and I got the role of Visitor Services and Learning Assistant. And this basically involved organising kind of family events and events across the site, but also running the school visits. And that's where I was able to kind of really bring in that thing that I'd found I really enjoyed during my degree, and kind of have that as part of my job as well. And this job really gave me a foot in the door. I was basically the property dog's body. I'd just do everything and anything and poke my nose into all the different things that were going on, and kind of grew up, I think, at that point in that organisation, and kind of got given little targets I had to work to, and number of school children to bring in, all sorts of things. But it kind of really helped me hone some skills kind of early on. And I've now worked for the organisation for 18 years. And I've done a mix of roles across houses and gardens, across countryside. And whilst I'm not directly in the field that my degree was in, it has come in handy with a lot of the knowledge that I gained during that time. For a while, I worked across Shropshire Hills, lots of archaeological features across that site. Parts of it were designated as scheduled monuments. And now 2 of the properties in the portfolio that I manage are scheduled monuments. So I'm working with Historic England on a regular basis. And it's been really helpful to understand a lot of that terminology and kind of find it in the back of my brain from those university years. And also that those skills you learn in how to interpret a site and all the rest of it are very prevalent, and working out how you work with to tell visitors or engage with visitors on why this brown bit of soil is a slightly more important bit of brown soil to this bit over here, and all the rest of it. So it's been great that I've been able to kind of pull on those skills I learnt at uni as well. And it definitely would have been a harder job had I not had this foundation in ancient history and archaeology. So the job I'm doing now is the role of general manager. I have responsibility of managing a cluster of properties in Warwickshire and Northamptonshire. I've got Upton House, Canons Ashby, Farnborough Hall and Lyveden. And my role is basically about delivering the business. So ensuring that visitors are coming in and they're happy, and that there's things for them to do. I also then set the plan for the conservation work and make sure we're looking after our places, we're developing them, and fundamentally making sure there's the money there to do it. So it's that kind of cycle of bringing money in to then spend it on those sites as we go round. And then aside from deciding that I would kind of really enjoy the engagement, one of the things that I kind of worked out at uni in particular is that I really crave variety. And I can't be doing a job where it's the same thing every day. And I've certainly found working in any of the jobs I've had in the National Trust that no 2 days are the same. There's always something. There's always challenges which I really enjoy and thrive on. They're mainly financial ones, but working with historic buildings, listed sites and scheduled monuments always presents a challenge, and kind of working with those different organisations is quite interesting, and different stakeholders to kind of come up with those solutions. Yeah, mention variety, but also working with people. So working with teams of staff and volunteers, engaging with visitors, external stakeholders, I've really enjoyed and enjoy that, what that gives me, and kind of talking to different people and working out how to get things done and look after our places. Okay, so my top tips, very similar to George's in a way, actually. My lesson learned, be more of a joiner, and it's great to just get stuck in. From my memory, ArcSoc was wild, so do go and join that, because that was a fun time. Take time for reflection to work out the things you do and, more importantly, don't enjoy doing, because they're really helpful when going into a job to work out what it is you like and don't like. You can't always cut out things you don't like, but at least you can try and focus it a bit. If you can factor in any volunteering, you will gain a lot of experience, and in reality, it will be good for your CV as an employer. You know, we are looking at people's ability to talk about their experiences, how they've applied them, as much as about their academic results as well. So that's really important. And make sure you have fun. Some of my happiest memories are those spent, you know, with my course mates, and we did have a really good time, worked hard, play hard. So I think that's it from me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily. That was really, really interesting. And I will now pass over to our final presenter, which is Bradley. Thanks, Bradley.
At Newcastle, I started on the partners program, which is yeah, I really enjoyed doing the partners scheme. I was saying to Connor before, I met most of the friends that I had while I was at university, pretty much all but like maybe 1, 2, 3 of them I met while I was on the partners program, and we kind of stayed a group for the 3 years I did my undergraduate, and then that group shrank a bit when I stayed on to do my master's degree, and you know, some of them didn't. They went off to do other things. But yeah, and then, you know, there's only really 2 people that I really keep in contact with from university in terms of like people I went to university with, and one of those people is someone I was on the partners program with. So the partners program was really important to my my university career. In terms of what I did at university, I think the things that stand out to me the most as like the projects, as I'm sure Emily and George will agree, is my dissertations were probably the biggest things that stand out. They, you know, there's times when they're really like breaking you down, and you're like, oh, this isn't worth it, but they always are. So my undergraduate dissertation was do the Knights Templar in the British Isles have a distinctive material signature, which I did with Dr. Duncan Wright. He was pretty new at the time when I was finishing my 3rd year. He's a medieval archaeologist, and yeah, I had a really good time. I think the thing I didn't realize until I was finishing my 2nd dissertation that I liked so much about doing dissertations as these big, huge projects that, you know, take months and months of your time it's very much, I found, a collaborative process between you and your supervisor. So my master's dissertation I did was called Apotropaism and Necrophobia. To what extent was superstition a motivator for atypical burial practices in late medieval and early modern England, which is a mouthful, but it was really interesting, which I did with Dr. Sophie Moore. That was very much like, you know, I would have ideas that I was passionate about, and Sophie would simply tell me no, and I would be like, what? No, this is a great idea, and she would say like, yeah, it might be a great idea, but it just doesn't fit with what you're doing. You're getting too big, you're going too small, and it was very much, I walked away with a master's dissertation that I'm really proud of, and that was because of Sophie's guidance and her structuring of me and her reining me in when I was getting ahead of myself. So I think that's something, I think I bring those up specifically because it's obviously early. You guys are on the partners program, but I think it's never too early to kind of think about what you might want your dissertation to be about, even if it's just like a topic or even a time period, because we're in archaeology and classics, or more specifically for archaeology, but yeah, topics, things like that, because I think you'll very quickly find you'll very quickly, even if you don't know it yet, you'll figure out what you're going to be doing it on pretty early in my experience. Like I think I knew by the end of my first year, I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely doing it on that. And just the more you spend, more time you have to learn about something, the better those things are going to turn out. And you can always tailor your other modules towards what you're going to eventually end up doing. In terms of like the other big thing I was involved with when I was at university, and just for context, they really did get a pretty good spectrum, because I started university the same year that George left. So I only graduated from my master's degree last year in December. So I'm pretty new out of the nest. But probably the biggest project I was involved with besides from that was Dr. Chloe Duckworth, who I believe may no longer be at Newcastle University. I'm not fully sure, but I think she may have just left. She asked me to join her for the excavation of Cherryburn, which is a National Trust site in Mickley, for an excavation that was being televised for the Great British Dig. So I got to be on that TV show. It was a week-long excavation, which was, it was a privilege to be asked. It was a privilege to do it, especially, like, as I'm sure Emily will be able to tell as well, to actually dig a National Trust site is, very exciting, because, the National Trust, they upkeep and maintain sites of importance. So Emily could probably tell you more, but in my experience, they're not thrilled about being like, oh yeah, go and churn it all up for and make it ugly for a few months. So it was really great to be able to do that. If you want to learn more about that, the episode is on ITVX or All 4 or something like that. But it was some interesting stuff. That was Thomas Bewick's home. He was a prominent wood engraver in Newcastle. But yeah, so that's kind of like a brief overview of my time at Newcastle. I really enjoyed my degree. I still keep in touch with a few of my friends, and more importantly, I think some of my lecturers are still quite important in my life. A few of them have been really key. And it's probably slightly different for me because I finished so recently, but they've been very directional and very helpful in figuring out in what direction I'm going, especially since I'm not pursuing archaeology actively. In terms of like my actual career history, I really don't have a career history. I would say I worked at a golf club bar for a year during COVID, which was really difficult because I don't drink, and people would ask me for all these cocktails and mocktails, and I didn't know what they were, and I'd have to like have my phone under the counter and googling what goes into them and trying to figure out other things. So that was not a good fit for me. And then while I did my master's degree, I worked for my mum, which was really. My mum is probably harder than any boss I'm ever going to have. But what made it trickier was I found when I was done with my master's degree and I was actually looking to start my career, a lot of applications would specify for your referees, like one of them has to be your most recent employer, but they can't be a relative. You can't be related to them in any way. And I'd be like, oh no, but my most recent employer is one of my relatives. And sometimes you have time to contact them to clarify, and sometimes you don't. Maybe you've come across the ad and the job closes tomorrow and you don't have time to contact them. So it was very irritating, honestly, more than anything. So if you can avoid working for a family member, that's one of my top tips, is avoid it, because it became very frustrating when I was actually trying to get off the ground properly. But yeah, so the next slide here. This is Joe. Joe has been very important to my career. Joe is the current member of Parliament for the Hexham constituency, who I now work for in his office. So technically, I work for the House of Commons, but I work in Hexham, in the Hexham constituency is actually like really, really huge. I don't know, obviously I'm sure not all of you or even most of you will be from like around this area, but just to briefly explain how big the constituency is, it goes from Haltwhistle, which is like the border of Northumberland and Cumbria, all the way to, it includes some parts of Newcastle, it includes Walburn, Throckley, Callerton, it goes all the way up to Morpeth and then around, and includes Long Horsley, and then all the way up to the Scottish border where at Carter Bar, which is a little monument. So it's the biggest constituency in England, which makes working for Joe really, really difficult because we have a lot of constituents and a lot of ground to cover, and Joe doesn't drive and I don't drive, and so we rely on his fiance, some of the other members of staff we have, but yeah, just to kind of delve into my job a little bit. So yeah, so Joe is the Member of Parliament for Hexham constituency. He was elected in the general election last year. He is the first non-conservative member of parliament for the Hexham constituency in over 100 years. So it was a very historic win, and it was, Joe is someone, while I was at university, I got involved with the Labour Party a little bit. So I campaigned for Joe, which is not something I thought I would ever do. Yeah, in terms of extracurriculars, that's probably my biggest one. Obviously, it's not super university related, but it's actually one of my lecturers that ended up getting me into politics. He kind of pointed me in a direction, asked me some questions that got me thinking, and then I ended up there. So that's probably, it hasn't been particularly very long, but that's probably been one of the most impactful things for me personally. One of the things I like George was kind of saying before, is I didn't want to live in London. I do like going to London, but I don't want to live in London. One of the things I like about working in an MP's office is, you can be in your constituency. I think the best way to imagine an MP's office, like their constituency office, it's kind of like a little embassy of Parliament. I'll be working in our office in Hexham one week, and then I have the option to go down to Westminster the next week and work either way I like, work from either office. So I'm a support officer, which is I think at a very intentionally vague title. I've read my job description 100 times, and it's just all very vague, and I think that was intentional. So what it basically means in reality is I kind of just help everyone else with their jobs. So we have caseworkers who help our constituents with, just issues they're facing, whether that's, talking to the local council, talking to government agencies like the Department for Education or the DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions, like George was talking about before. But we also communicate a lot with agencies like the National Trust and with English Heritage as well. English Heritage recently announced that they were closing Prudhoe Castle and Aden Castle, which are two castles in the Hexham constituency. So we've been having an ongoing dialogue with them about things like that. One of the first things, there's a girl in my office called Katie. She said, welcome. Now you have to know everything about everything, because people do write to us and they just expect you to have answers. And it's, sometimes, like today, I was saying to Connor before, today is a very important vote in Parliament about welfare reforms and the future of disability benefit payments. And people, write to me and expect me to have answers about that. So you just kind of have to do your best to know everything about everything. Yeah, I'm sensing a theme with the three of us. None of my days look the same. It's part of the nature of my job as a support officer is, one day I'm helping Hope, our communications officer, with the website or social media something, or she asks me, okay, well, if we go and do a photo shoot over here, can you do this, this, and this? Or the next day I'm helping with casework, or I'm helping Edie, who's our only person permanently based in Parliament, with policy things. Probably the biggest thing I've done recently is we've got what we're calling a summer tour, which is Joe is going all over our constituency, I think we've got about 105 stops or something like that in 4 weeks, which is, quite a few a day. And that was kind of just left for me to figure out. I think that's, I think that is something I didn't realize probably about all jobs before I started, is just people will give you jobs and just be like, I need you to just go and figure out how to do this. I don't have answers for you. Just please go and like make sure that this happens. And yeah, so, having the freedom to have to do that your own way is really interesting, but it's also a pretty big challenge, because I can be pretty indecisive, but sometimes you just have to be like, okay, this decision has to be made and I'm the one making the decision. I think every MP, they spend most of the week in Parliament. Even though they represent a constituency of the country, they spend most of their week in Parliament. In my experience, it's usually like Sunday or Monday till Thursday, or maybe even Friday. But Friday and Saturday are usually the days when they're around within the constituency. So they've got like 1 or 2 days of the week to actually be present in the constituency. And I manage Joe's diary, so one of the key tricks of my job is, okay, Joe is here 1 day a week. How do I make it feel like he is really present in the constituency, when in reality he spends most of his time in London? And that really comes down to us as an office. That's one of the scary things as well, is you become friends with these people, with Joe, my MP, and when he's in London, he kind of relies on us and me as an extension of himself. Anything we do reflects good or bad on him. So it's very nervous to have someone, semi-important like that have their career in your hands. It's very nerve-wracking, but exciting as well, obviously. Yeah, I think probably my top tips, just the basic ones you'll hear 1,000 times from, us, your parents, anyone. Make friends, network, things like that. Make sure you come out of university with some understanding, even if you don't end up going into archaeology, which I didn't. Having those contacts and transferable skills as well, obviously, they're always valuable. They are always valuable. Staying in touch with lecturers has been a big one for me. So James Gerard, who's a lecturer at Newcastle University, a professor of Roman archaeology, I talk to him pretty regularly. Joe, the MP I work for, just visited an excavation he's doing with Newcastle University, excavating a Roman site. That's one of the things. Everybody kind of loves archaeology. So, just knowing something about archaeology gives you a leg up in any conversation, I found, to be honest. One of the biggest things to be prepared for me, I'm not sure if everyone else would agree with me on this, but something I found out when I first got to university was I kind of had to relearn everything. Like, by the time I was finishing high school and sixth form, I wasn't getting the best grades, and I thought like, God, how am I going to get through university? Because I really want to go to university. And then I got to university and I started getting pretty good grades, and I was like, but this doesn't make any sense. And it just kind of turns out that maybe high schools and sixth forms, like the way they have you writing essays, maybe on the way you should actually go about writing essays, is the kind of the thing I learned. So be prepared, be open to changing the way you do things, or maybe you'll find that the way you do things fits better in the subject you're doing, because a subject like archaeology and classics isn't something you have a lot of opportunity to do at high school or sixth form. Just to echo something George said as well, is this only really occurred to me like right at the end when I was doing my second dissertation, because I started really early, and it meant that I kind of finished my second draft like a month or two before the deadline. And it meant that I spent that last month or two just rewriting it for the sake of rewriting it. Like, I would stay up late at night just to rewrite it. And I wasn't making it better. I was just torturing myself and rewriting it just to rewrite it, not to improve it at a certain point. I think at a certain, giving yourself too much time is almost, it can almost be as tricky as giving yourself not enough time to do something. It depends, if you have the ability to go, okay, I'm done and I have a month to spare, I'm going to put that aside and maybe I'll give it another look closer to the time. If you have that ability, then that's great. I didn't. So I just spent that month just completely torturing myself, overworking myself on a piece of work that was already finished. Yeah, so I think that was my biggest takeaway is, not giving yourself enough time to do something is dangerous, and giving yourself way too much time to do something can also be a bit tricky depending on how you work. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything from me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Bradley. And thank you to all our speakers there. We'll move on to the Q&A portion now. A question from Elliot asking, how does the postgraduate civil service support work? So I assume that's kind of in relation to the graduate program potentially, if you're okay to speak to that.
So in terms of the graduate scheme, you have to have a degree to apply to it for 2-2. Undergrad, they will check it when you go to your assessment centre. You've got to take it with you. So that's sort of like your ticket in. That sort of helps you bypass a bit of the application process. You don't apply via the normal civil service jobs. And then once you're actually in the civil service, like they are well aware it's your first job. Or for most people, it's the first job. So there is a lot of support there around like explaining processes to you, helping you get on board, helping you sort of like set your learning and development plan, identifying training that suits you and what your sort of like career goals are and what you want to learn. So it's pretty all encompassing, really. It is quite good. They recognise, like I said, to a graduate scheme, you're not being chucked in at day one expected to be able to do the job. It is very much a ramp up, which I appreciate going into it from university.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much, George. We've got one here which I'll direct to Emily, which is how easy is it to get onto dig sites and what is the process to getting on them?
Well, that's a great question. In some cases, I think it's actually quite hard because of the joys of health and safety. But various organisations, be it councils who will have either using their own archaeological departments or some of the bigger archaeological companies that you can sort of Google, will quite often take volunteers, or like the ones that I did were community ones. So anyone, any level of experience could sign up for, and they would support you through that. So I would just do a ton of searching and see what you can find. There's also, even if you can't get onto dig sites, quite a lot of places around the country will have ARCs, so archaeological resource centres, who will also probably take volunteers. So even if you're not necessarily out on the digs, you might have those opportunities to work with finds and things like that and understand that process of when stuff comes off site and away, what happens there. Or I did my my master's placement at Segedunum, which quite often has digs running at the same time. So it's worth having a look at some of those sites, be it Housesteads, Segedunum, Vindolanda. Quite often they've got things kind of going on as well that you might be able to get involved in. But yeah, I think you unfortunately just got to do a bit of graft, kind of looking out for things. But people will take volunteers, and it's a really good experience aside from the ones that you'll do as part of your course.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Emily. The next one I might throw out to all three of you, but start off with Bradley. It's from Evie. It says, what aspect of your job do you think is the hardest?
I mean, from my job personally, I mean, you know, I think everyone has the same opinion of politics. It's just politics it can be very ugly. And you know, a few weeks ago, in 1 week, the two things that I was quite happy about happened, which were we moved towards decriminalizing abortion, and also we moved towards legalizing assisted dying, which were, you know, they were really, for me personally, they were things that I cared passionately about, and I was really happy to see that. But unfortunately, because of the job I'm in, I got to hear from a lot of people who were really not happy about that. And I think that can be the thing is, you know, the people who write to their MP are often not in a good position all the time, and especially if they're writing about policy and they're upset about it, then yeah, you kind of get to see the people at their lowest or their most frustrated or their angriest. So yeah, that's probably the toughest thing about my job personally.
Thanks, Bradley. Emily, would you be able to speak on that as well?
Yes, I think at the moment, the economic climate that we're in, funding in particular is really challenging, and funding the various pieces of work and projects that we want to do, not just across my sites, but across the organisation. It's a real challenge to find the money. I mean, Bradley kind of mentioned before about working with a couple of English heritage sites that were looking to have to reduce their hours. It's tough out there in the heritage sector at the moment, and finding the funds we need to keep going, keep doing what we're doing. So I feel like I'm essentially a creative accountant a lot of the time, just moving money around to try and find the things that I need to do the jobs that definitely need to be done. So that is a tough one at the moment. Because I never want to, feel like I'm letting anyone down or letting the sites down. So it can be tough getting everything done that we need to.
Thanks, Emily. And George?
I think for me, it's quite a unique one to consultancy. And anyone who wants to go on maybe be a consultant, I'm not sure if that's anyone's childhood dream, is you're not the decision maker anymore. You're paid by someone to do a job. And compared to when I was in the civil service, especially at the National Crime Agency, I was quite lucky to be quite senior. I had a lot of decision-making power. I quite liked that sort of responsibility. I could set direction. Whereas now, that's someone else has to do with all that, and regardless what decision they make, I still have to deliver the output. I find that shift quite challenging, and that's something I'm still getting used to.
Thank you very much, George. We've got one from Anna that, again, because I'm not exactly sure what you all might have done work experience-wise or not at uni, I'll kind of probably throw out to all three of you. But maybe to start again with you, George. The question is, was there any work experience opportunities you were able to use during your time at Newcastle Uni?
So I did a few bits. I worked for the National Citizen Service over the summer holidays. If anyone remembers that when you were at high school, I was one of the senior mentors, which was nice that we had money coming in. But beyond that, you do field work as part of your degree in archaeology. So I did my field work, which was for British School and Ireland on the Army Reserve to have a bit of extra income on the side. So I picked a few bits like that. I definitely didn't do anything. So again, if anyone wants my email or whatever, I'm happy to chat this through offline, but you can do like the civil service, they do multiple summer internship and Easter internship programs for sort of like students in the first, second or third year of uni, which are paid and are really good opportunities. I didn't know about them, but when I was in the civil service, I helped run them. So I wish I'd known about those in sort of parts, but I didn't.
Thanks, George. Emily?
Yes, let me think. I need to cast my mind back quite far. I think, like I said when I spoke, there were various opportunities that came up through the lecturers when they were kind of doing their own kind of pieces of work outside of the digs and things that you had to do as part of your modules. So I'd keep your eyes and ears to the ground to see what opportunities come up that way. And I think Bradley was saying about having kind of good relationships with your lecturers and things. It's amazing what bits and pieces can kind of come up in that way. I'm trying to think what other. So my master's, 2 months of it was purely work experience. That was part of the course, and then outside of that, trying to think what else we did. What's it called now? Is it the Great Museum of the North? Is what it's called now, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, Great North Museum, I think.
Great North Museum. So it was something different when I was there. There were some opportunities with them because obviously like next door. So it was worth having a kind of a little look and seeing what's available there. Other than that, it's I think having a look at the different organisations in and around the city or where you are, and seeing what volunteering opportunities, or even just asking for a couple of weeks work experience, because you've been amazed quite a few places might be quite happy to kind of accommodate that. So I'll just get a bit cheeky, to be honest, and put something out there and see what comes back.
Absolutely. And Bradley, obviously you mentioned about the dig you did. Was there anything more you want to speak to on that, or any other kinds of work experience you were involved in during your time at uni?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one is, so I did the televised excavation was between my undergraduate and my postgraduate degrees. As I would imagine it's fairly similar since it's been fairly recently when I was there, but it might have changed, I'm not sure. But you had to do 4 weeks of work experience, like in industry experience, when I did my bachelor's degree in archaeology. Like I said, I'm not sure if that's the same, but I kind of said to one of my lecturers, I was like, So we have to do 4 weeks of work experience. You know, I think the university provided 2 weeks of it at a Newcastle university excavation, and you kind of had to like get a bit industrious to find the other two yourself, and they provided support in that. But what I kind of ended up saying is, I was like, internally, I was like, I don't want to do 4 weeks of hard work for free. So I said, if I can go away and find like an internship or something like that, like if I can go and find an archaeological company that'll take me for 4 weeks, would I be able to do that? And they were eventually like, okay, that would be fine. So I ended up, I spent I did 3 weeks down in Cambridge. I did a week in Cambridge with pre-construct archaeology Cambridge, and then 2 weeks in Milton Keynes with pre-construct archaeology Cambridge, back to back. And then I did 1 week at the Great North Museum to kind of get my 4 weeks together. So that was really nice. I think as well, even if you are pretty keen on like if you're doing archaeology or joint archaeology, even if you think right now like, oh, I want to be excavating, I would try the other aspects of it. I would try being in museums and things like that, because you might find, I ended up finding out that like, oh, I like this big air conditioned building more than this field with where my lips get chapped and my legs hit. So that was kind of my experience, but yeah, and I got paid for it, which was nice.
Brilliant, thank you all. Yeah, and suppose just to speak from a current careers service perspective, there will be lots of opportunities for you to get involved in work experience during your time at uni, of varying kind of lengths in terms of everything from a full placement year down to shorter term kind of internships, or it could be shadowing or whatever it might be. And we can kind of help you figure out the one that's right for you and help you find some opportunities. And again, whether that's directly related to your degree, you can also try out some things that are slightly different from your degree and build some of those transferable skills. So there'll be loads of support on offer as well with that. So we've got a question here asking if the year abroad is worth doing, or can you still have the same experience not going abroad? Speakers, did any of you go abroad at all during your time at uni? I'm seeing shaking heads. No. So doing either a study abroad or a work placement overseas obviously can be a fantastic experience. So lots of students undertake. I think that although you can still get plenty of brilliant experiences either kind of socially or professionally without going abroad, obviously it is a fantastic opportunity, and you're probably going to be able to meet people and do certain things that you might not get to do if you stayed just in the UK or just on your kind of regular 3-year course. So I definitely think if it's something you're interested in, come speak to the kind of career service and the study abroad team about that and the kind of opportunities that it can offer you, because I think it's a really good one to bear in mind whilst you're here. So keep putting your questions through if you have any that come to mind. One thing I was going to ask about was, you've all got quite varied roles, but I imagine one thing that can be a challenge for each of you is managing your work-life balance. Bradley, I know that you were talking about managing the diary of the MP you work for and the time down in London, and then coming back up to the constituency like towards the end of the week. I can imagine that is a challenge as a knock-on for you as well in terms of managing your work-life balance. Can you speak at all to how you have found that so far, and kind of any tips on how you might look to have a good work-life balance?
I think work-life balance is something I've always struggled with. I think at university I put too much emphasis on the life and not enough on the work. There was days where I was like, I should go to the library today, and then I didn't go to the library. And now I think it's like fully flipped, where like I think the key with a work-life balance isn't 50-50. It's wherever your center is what I found. Like, you know, there are days when I'd rather work till like 7 or 8 p.m. and feel fulfilled at the end of that day, feeling like, wow, I'm so glad we got that done. This is going to go down really well. This is a really good thing that I've helped put out there. rather than if I'd finished at 5 and then just watch TV for a bit. Yeah, like, it's important to unwind, I think, definitely. But and I mean, you'll find this out a lot as well. Different companies do different things, but and in the House of Commons, we mainly do toil, which is time off in lieu. So if I work till 8 p.m. one night, so that's 3 hours over my working day, then that's 3 hours I can claim back. So I can leave at 2 the next day. So that's pretty good for me. So yeah, I think the key thing for a work-life balance for me is just your balance might be different to someone else's balance, and yeah, just if you if you finish the day thinking like, oh, that was a good day of work, I think that's a more fulfilling feeling than clocking out and feeling a bit empty from it. I think I think just find your balance personally.
Yeah, I think that's great advice from Bradley. It's one of those things about working out what works for you at the end of the day, and also having an understanding of how it might kind of apply to different contexts as well. So the work-life balance that you find at uni might be slightly different work-life balance that you find if you go out on like a year in industry or in your career. So it can change in time and place, but it's important to kind of keep an eye on how you're doing on that front. Kind of keep a bit of a mental checklist, I suppose, about how you're getting on and make adjustments as you need to. But some people really want to go heavy on the work thing and they love that. And other people need a little bit more of the life side, if you like. So just find what works for you. Another thing I wanted to ask about, maybe with you, Emily, was just in terms of if you're going through your degree and you're thinking, actually, definitely want to do something that's going to be specific to what I'm studying academically, and I want to go into a career where I'm going to use my degree every day. What kind of advice would you give in terms of maybe, I suppose, both how to approach the academics, but also building your experience whilst you're at uni, and then kind of maybe getting that first step once you leave?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm trying to think. When I was at uni, definitely for my undergraduate, we were kind of given a nominated kind of lecturer that was our person to go to. So I'm assuming there's some kind of like similar kind of process now. And I think I probably wasn't brave enough at uni to kind of really build that relationship. But I think that's a really critical one to have and to use that, especially now. You're paying a lot of money for this. Like get your money's worth out of these lecturers and have those conversations and talk to them. And again, I'm assuming it's similar now, Connor, that there's like a very relaxing career suite at Newcastle that you could kind of go in and sort of peruse and sort of spend some time in and use those resources because they are all there for you to kind of go and have those conversations. And also just because you're thinking about something at 18, 19 or what have you, doesn't mean that that's you till you're 70. Like, you can change your mind, but it's worth exploring these options and having these conversations with these people that are in that industry that are around you there and then. And also your lecturers will be well connected either within the academic community or through various sites that they've worked on, other museums and things. They're bound to know someone that they can put you in touch with to have a conversation and talk about careers and kick some ideas around and help you kind of work through it. It's okay to ask questions and to try and figure out what kind of work what you want to do. And like I said in my bit, like, if you can take some time every now and again just to be reflective about what you do and don't enjoy, what you do, as much as like the area you want to go in, because going into archaeology, say, you could go down a very academic route, you could go down a very kind of practical route. So trying to work out, is there an area that you particularly enjoy or way of working, is going to be really helpful for you. But there are lots of people around to help you kind of work that through and tease that out with you. And you've got 3 years, so you've got plenty of time. No one's expecting you to have it all figured out on day one.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'd echo all that and say yes, we have just had a recently refurbed careers centre over in Kingsgate, so please come and see us there. And we have our great team of careers consultants who can do exactly that, can talk to you at whatever kind of stage you're at in thinking about all of this stuff, kind of meet you where you are and talk about what your interests are, what you might like to do, and also how work with you as that changes potentially across your degree. And when you try out different types of work experience, one of the big things about that is that it'll give you a sense of do I like this? What do I like about this? What skills am I developing and all that kind of thing. Thank you very much, Emily. And George, you kind of touched on this a bit in your presentation, but in terms of thinking about more transferable skills, perhaps that you would have built during your degree and applying those outside of a context that's directly related to what you studied, moving into your career, what are the kind of key skills you feel like you got from your degree, and what ones do you think you kind of needed to develop to step into your line of work?
I think there's a couple bits. So I think the more like direct transferable skills is like I sort of said, it's having a question or being given, you've got objectives you need to achieve. There's a question that's being set or whatever. How do you go about solving it, and how do you create and curate an evidence base, construct an argument, and then present that argument back? I mean, written communication is key. Like all leaders now, and like senior people and sort of the best consultants and the best sort of like filter are people who can communicate an idea and communicate the solution to a problem. And I think that's what Newcastle does really well, and like the degrees in particular, and the staff in the department. Like I still channel my inner Matthew Haston whenever I'm writing something. So he's very good at going like, what does that actually mean? What does this sentence actually mean? It's that way you create an argument. I think that's probably the key skill that you'll take away. I think archaeology and sort of like ancient history and history is particularly good at this because you work with such a varied evidence base. You might be working with an archive, you might be working with material culture, might be some scientific evidence. You've got your classic literary sources. And that's the same in the real world. So it might be different evidence bases, but you're still working with breadth of evidence base. And I think that's only going to get more important. So I won't get too into this, but I sort of touched on it. But like, people talk about now like the AI revolution, and it's going to take all the sort of like entry level jobs, and all people our age are going to be out of work. And that I don't think that's the case. I'm talking with people who are much more knowledgeable than me on the matter. That's also not seen as the case. It's a shift in what the skills are. So it might be less like, can you do financial analysis, or can you like review a contract? It's more, how do you use AI? And again, like AI, large language models, whatever, it's how do you ask a question? It's how do you sort of give the instruction? It's how do you sort of then assess the validity of what the response is that the AI tool has created? And again, it's that skill set which fits really neatly and is very transferable from, again, archaeology, going back to the point around creating an argument, assessing a source, working with different evidence base. So I think we're looking at the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to be more important than ever. I think that the degree will set you up really well for that sort of world and where we are heading in terms of the transferable skill sets. Just realised you asked the second part of that question, which is what do you need to further develop? For me, it's public speaking. I definitely shied away from presentations, and like we had the dissertation module session where you had to present on your dissertation. I was quite terrible at that. I did more of it in my master's, going back to like took part in conferences and that sort of stuff. But I definitely didn't do enough. And public speaking and presenting is something I've had to get up ease with, because again, you've got to present your work back, or you've got to bring the client on the journey, or you've got to chair a round table of experts. It's just part of life. And I wish I'd got on with that earlier in my undergraduate and made the most of like the seminars and presenting and feeding back, because I think I could have developed that skill a lot more earlier on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, George. That's a great answer. And Bradley, just to finish, question asking how big the jump is from doing an undergrad to a master's. What was your experience of that?
My experience might be a little bit different. I did my master's degree part-time. So instead of doing it in 1 year, I did it over 2. For me, that was kind of like, that was the ideal way to do it. I know pretty much all of my friends did it in 1 year, and they looked very, very stressed. I think it's a pretty gargantuan undertaking in a year. It's definitely doable, like most people do it in a year. I think it was just doing it part-time for me was like, it let me do some work on the side and have money to do things, but also to actually like something I struggled with during my 3rd year was when I was doing like in what undergraduate terms are like the most advanced modules. I was struggling to actually to like properly learn things because I was just looking for things to be evidence for my arguments, like George was saying. And I wasn't actually like taking the time to learn about these things. I was just like, what do I need? Where's the information that I need? And I wasn't like actually immersing myself in these periods of history or these topics. And so that was something doing my master's part-time allowed me to do. But yeah, I think I don't think it's to answer the question properly, I don't think the actual jump is that massive. Like I think if you can finish a bachelor's degree, I don't think there's any reason why you can't do a master's degree as well. I think it's just if you're going to do it full time in 1 year, I think you have to be prepared to, it's going to come thick and fast, and you've just got to be ready to. I think that's where, I believe George did his master's in Greek archaeology. I stuck general because I'm really indecisive, and I was like, oh, but I like prehistory, but I also like medieval, so I kept really general. I can imagine if I did mine full time, that would have made it a lot more difficult. If you specialize and oh well, the thing I learned in this module is helping me in this module, that would be helpful. But for me, I was doing one module about medieval England and then another one about like prehistoric Europe, and I was like, okay, this is just not like they're just totally incongruent and they're not helping me with the other one. But specializing helps as well when you're doing your master's degree. So yeah, be prepared for like just like it to come thick and fast, and specialize if you want to streamline it for yourself. But part-time is also an option.
Great. Thank you so much, Bradley. So those are our main questions. We do have a final question for all three of you just to close. We have had a request to hear George play the guitar, but unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have time for that one today. Maybe next time. But the final question for you all to consider is, considering your time at university and your own career, what one bit of advice would you like to share with the partners students? So I'm aware you've given a lot of advice, obviously, today already, but if you had one kind of take-home message for everyone, what would it be? But I'll start off with you, Bradley, if that's okay. So what one bit of advice would you like our partner students to take away today?
What one bit of advice? I think probably is I mean it does sound generic, and like literally anyone can tell you this, and they will, but just make sure you are again, kind of like I was saying about balance, I think immersion into the university lifestyle is also different for every person. Like I'm probably more like Emily. I didn't get that involved, and I do regret not being involved in some things. But I think at the very least, like even if you don't end up being active in societies, try different societies, especially early on in Freshers Week and things like that. Go to different things and just like, at least go being like, oh no, that wasn't for me, instead of finishing university never having even tried. At least try things, even if you end up like I tried the theatre society at Newcastle because I did theatre in sixth form, and I ended up not liking it. I kind of figured out, I was like, oh, I just liked the friends that I had in sixth form and doing that in sixth form. But that's something that I think I wouldn't have figured out if I hadn't at least tried.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bradley. Emily?
I'd say number one, go to your lectures, because it is what you're paying for, and also it is part of that kind of connection time. It is where you're going to get the most amount of contact. I think sometimes when you kind of start uni and it's like you've got all of this freedom and you're like, I've only got 10 hours of things to do or whatever in a semester, but actually go to your lectures and do the reading, but also make some time for fun, because it is a great blast, particularly being in Newcastle. So yeah, you'd have a great time there.
Thanks very much, Emily. And George?
I definitely echo what you two said, Bradley and Emily. I think, engage with university life and work out what that means for you. Not everyone does societies or, additional stuff on the side, but work out what you want so you get the most out of it. You don't look back and regret not doing anything. And then learn to prioritize as well. Just hopping on the back of Bradley's response about the MA jump. I did my MA in 1 year, and it's like the hardest thing I've ever done. lots of other stuff fell by the wayside. Instead, I hadn't really learned how to time manage or how to prioritize activities, to learn what's important and give it the right amount of time and actually engage and listen to your lecturers, because they will give you some advice like, oh, do you want to think about maybe doing an MA in 2 years? Because it is really hard. And you get, nah, I'll be fine. And then actually it is really hard, it turns out. So it turns out they do know what they're talking about. So yeah, just engage with life, prioritize what you're doing and listen to the people who do know what we're talking about, believe it or not.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a great place to end, and all that's left to say is an absolutely huge thank you to Emily, Bradley, and George for giving up their time today to share their experience and their expertise and their advice. I hope you've all found it really, really useful. I've certainly found it really insightful, and it's been great to hear from you all. And thank you all very much for your questions as well. And I hope you've enjoyed the session. So thank you very much, all of you, and I hope you have a great day.